In today's video, we're going to be reviewing the AnE Gold Grid Expert Advisor by Mr. Thie. So this bot is very honest in what it is. He's saying that, hey, this is a grid bot, and if you don't like grids, don't buy this bot. And I think that's quite refreshing, actually, because oftentimes developers try to almost obfuscate or hide the fact that a bot is a grid, whereas there is sometimes applications for grid bots. Some people love grid bots. It's not my preference, but some people really like them. So if you make a bot which caters to that clientele, and as long as you're transparent with what it is, I personally see nothing wrong with that. So here he's saying hey, this trades in gold on the M15 and it uses a grid-based averaging strategy. And he also says always run a demo account first just so you understand how grids work. And I really like that he's very transparent, and he says hey, this uses the grid martingale. If you don't like grid martingales, probably not for you. At the same time, you will need to hold some kind of drawdowns, and you're going to have to hold essentially a floating drawdown just given the nature of the strategy. So generally makes sense. Most likely it's entering with a basic mean reversion premise, and then it's just continuously averaging in if gold or if the price ultimately goes against where it entered. And here we can see that opens positions as a group. There's a few different filters here, there is a spread filter, there is a lot size limit. So essentially if you don't want it to get massive and blow through your margin, you can do that. And you can also put a max equity drawdown here, which is also really important. By default, it's 80%. Just so one thing, if you just chuck this in your chart, on the M15, most likely you're going to be using extremely high risk, because an 80% drawdown, you pretty much blow your account, right? And at that point, you've probably gotten margin called by most brokers anyway. Anything below 50%, more often than not, you've probably already been margin called. So just be mindful of that. And yeah, it looks like, honestly, as expected, probably it's more of a trend following one if we look at this photo, because it seems almost like here, if it was a true mean reversion entry, it probably would be buying. But what he's seeing is that hey, it's kind of going with the trend and it's shorting, but then if it reverses, it then kind of starts to enter grid mode. So that's actually a little bit unique, probably makes more sense for gold. So far the reviews have been quite good, obviously 5-star. And if we go to the signal, 28% so far, running on a real broker, IC Markets, so nothing fishy here. So guys, it's a gold grid, it's cheap, it seems non-manipulated. Just this style of system is quite risky, so if you don't like this style of system, be careful. But if you're trading this on one account, some people, for instance, who like grid martingales, a really smart thing that you can do, I learned this from Brandon, is you can have 20 accounts, right? And just run different style of bots in your 20 accounts. So even if one of them gets margin called, even if you lose the occasional one account, you have another 19, which should still be in profit. That's one intelligent way of using a grid. What I would certainly not do is take a big account, let's say a $50,000 account, and put one ultra high risk grid bot without restricting the amount of equity it can use. I would not put a single grid bot in a big account anyway, just because even if you restrict the equity that it can use, even if you put a max drawdown, etc., just in case it kind of maybe something goes wrong in the code or whatnot, you want to be mindful of that, and you want to make sure that it does not actually trigger a grid in a large amount of capital. So yeah, overall looks solid. It's running on a small account here. The initial deposit was $500 USD, so it's not that tiny. It's actually by MQL5 standards, that's not that small. Sometimes you see $50 deposits. We're not actually seeing much lot sizing scaling here. Yeah, it's all consistent lot sizes. That's a bit weird. I would expect to see, especially because he says it's martingale, I would expect to see some sort of scaling where it's going from 0.1 to 0.2 to 0.3 to 0.4, or even greater than that, more of an exponential scaling. So that's a bit odd, but maybe let's run ourselves a back test to get a bit of a better idea. So I ran a back test here over 1 year, and we made around 23% with a 1% drawdown. So yeah, super conservative settings. Let's look at the actual trades. And yeah, so okay, so I guess it's a grid, but it's not a martingale. You can turn on martingale if you want, but this is just a standard grid style system. Let's just back a little bit. We've seen, yeah, okay, so here we go. And it's matching really what I think it's like more of the initial point is more of a trend following one, because like we're buying in an uptrend and we're shorting in more of a downtrend, and then we enter grid mode. So it's almost like a pullback with the prevailing trend. So that makes sense. Pullback with the prevailing trend, like we're in a downtrend, there's a pullback, it's shorts. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And here we go. Oh, so perhaps it's also using a time-based setting. Yeah, that's also quite interesting here. Like maybe the entry is actually a breakout, like a time-based breakout, because he's saying that it has to match your broker. So let's go through and actually look at the time of the initial in. It could be like London breakout. It could be, yeah. So my guess is that the initial, there's probably a trend filter combined with a time-based trigger, and then combined with a grid. So there's certainly a real strategy here. It looks well thought out. Just like, as we all need to be mindful of, this is a higher risk strategy. So we're not seeing much here. Okay, yeah, market entries. Cool. Okay, guys, this is a gold grid pot, as the name would suggest. There is a real strategy here. It looks like he's put quite a bit of thought into it. Certainly higher risk to run any sort of grid on gold, just given the volatility of the asset. But I do think if you like grids, this one, especially because it's quite cheap and it's coming from a good developer who knows what he's doing, there could perhaps be some sort of application as well for a small account. But always be aware of the risk, but also know that if you like grids, this might be worth looking at. Guys, hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you in the next one.